So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Thursday, April the 29th, 2021, and their call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Honored and delighted that you're here with us. We get to engage in this absolutely amazing conversation once again that informs us of when you go back to the first century Aramaic language, the deepest levels of healing that have ever been comprehended on the earth. It's just most amazing when you actually get back to the original conversation 2,000 years ago, what was being spoken of. And it brings, when you get to the first century Aramaic thought structure, it brings most of the teaching out of the arena of theology and religion into the arena of physics and physiology and psychology and genetics. And you realize that the teachings are there that are grounded in actual science for bringing this energy system. We bring the oldest of the teachings from the Aramaic and then the newest of the understanding of physics. And you realize that your body is not a physical substance, a physical structure. That's just an icon in your mind. That's something created by your mind. But that your energy system is real and is governed not by the rules of some theological theory, but rather by the rules of physics that are eternal forces created by the Creator at creation. So it puts the whole conversation in a different context. And then you understand how the human mind works, how the interaction between mind and body work, and it's mind-boggling. So we're here and delighted that you're joining with us in boggling our minds and bringing forward deeper and deeper levels of understanding. And so we've been reading from the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? We are up to page 61 in the chapter on Aramaic wisdom, or pardon me, on ancient wisdom. So we're looking at this conversation. We're having this conversation with a character named Richard, who's a recalcitrant kind of guy who doesn't really want to hear anything we're talking about, especially if it backs of what he considers to be religion. And step by step, we've been slowly introducing him to the fact that understanding how his own mind works and how his mind brings forward pain and prejudice from past experiences to his state today, and that he can change those things that compromise the perceptual quality of his mind's output. It just, opens a whole different conversation. And of course, the ancient wisdom that we're talking about is the Aramaic. So we're looking at forgiveness as a process of release. And speaking of that, in the Aramaic context, we live in a culture that gives us a Greek idea that forgiveness is about how I let you off the hook for the pain that's moving in me, where 2,000 years ago you realize Yeshua was talking about how you address and remove the pain that's moving in you, rather than trying to let somebody else off the hook for it and live in a world of blame. Which, of course, blame leads to conflict. Conflict leads to, all the insanity that's going on in the planet is a result of that dynamic. And so we're looking to reverse the false understandings and come into true possession of the knowledge that was there in the Aramaic. And we're talking about the fact that, there's a process called healing, and when you put an energy into the human energy system, it produces symptoms. If you're in pain because of that energy, then you're going to have to remove the energy from your system, which means you're going to get to experience some symptoms. We'll detail that a little more later, but Richard now is asking the questions, well, how long is that going to take? And my answer is kind of a tongue-in-cheek, as long as it takes. It can be a pleasant, the healing process can be a pleasant, exciting, and easy experience, though, unfortunately, many, because of resistance, don't go through it easily. It's an individual process that can be accelerated, I added. How? He says with some excitement. Well, there are many factors that determine how quickly you move through your healing, how easily you process. These include your nutrition, exercise, your support system, and a host of other factors. The best way I know how to apply what I like to call cosmic grease, is to apply what I like to call cosmic grease. And of course, cosmic grease is the willingness to embrace with love whatever you find inside yourself. It speeds up the process immeasurably. If we have shuddered and held our breath and railed against the pain that's going on inside of us, that pain tends to solidify and we hide it from ourselves. The breath is one of the keys to how we hide pain from ourselves, and the opening of the breath is one of the ways that we access that which we've been hiding. And then add to that the willingness to embrace and move through whatever doesn't belong. I can go back, I'm not sure exactly how many years, probably 25 or 30 years ago, and look at the previous 20 or so years of doing this work and wondering, reaching, stretching to understand what is it that causes healing to occur? What's its core? What's at the root of all healing? I'd seen cases where people didn't seem any different than the person beside them, but one person moved through some healing and the other one didn't. There's an interesting story in the scriptures about a woman who had what they called an issue of blood for 12 years. Pretty serious situation for a woman in the Jewish culture, where if your menstrual cycle is active, you are unclean and can't go in the kitchen and feed your children or your spouse. So 12 years of that issue of blood is pretty profound. And we hear that this woman has some sort of an inner knowing that if she can just get to a higher support system, she will be able to heal. And that was termed as if she could touch the hem of his garment. And then we're told that in a throng of people, I believe the word in the scriptures is throng, I'm not sure exactly how many that is, that healing does occur, and Yeshua notices the energy shift in his field. They speak of it as, he experienced it as virtue had left him, and not in the sense of a moral type of situation, but that he realized that someone was drawing on his energy and noticed an energy shift in himself. And there's an instant stoppage of this disease process. It's a serious physical ailment. 12 years is a long time for something like that to go on. She's healed right then and there. Now, of course, the religionists, generally speaking, don't really have any interest in the principle behind what's happening or understanding what's going on. They just want to create a situation where their religious leader is the king of all the leaders and everybody else is a wimp. And, in fact, you're going to hell and you're a Satanist if you believe in any other than that one. And they lay the healing at his feet. But if you listen to him, he doesn't take credit for it. He's working with a principle. Yes, he's a high vitality being. To touch the hem of his garment, she was able to tap into the love that he brought into the world. And I'll offer for me, this period back 25 or so years ago, it became clear that whenever a major shift occurred in somebody's life, and I don't care whether it was a physical disease that disappeared, a mental, emotional disorder, financial even, the two things that occurred simultaneously that allowed that to happen were that, one, This person stood in a space of willingness and was able to access the disintegrative energy that they've been hiding from themselves directly. People access those kinds of things all the time, but they don't access them directly. They usually access them when they're projecting those energies into their brain's image of someone else. So they have indirect access to the dis-ease energy when I say, you made me mad. Boy, I really want to heal my mad, but you made me mad. Well, the only way they have access to that energy of quote-unquote mad is when it shows up in their brain's image of somebody else. That's indirect access to that energy. It doesn't heal when that happens. It's when there's direct access. And the Aramaic forgiveness process is what gives you direct access, because it collapses the projection of that energy into your brain's image of someone else and allows you to go directly to the root of that. And when that occurs, and you touch the hem of his garment, and we're not talking about an individual here, we're talking about the active presence of love. When love is conscious, active, and present, and it meets that which has been in hiding, we have hidden from ourselves in the mind, then the meeting of those two means that there is a transmutation of the lower dis-ease energy and healing occurs. It's a really important principle to understand. And of course, there's a good reason to strive to bring love present to your life, to your mind, to your emotions, to your circumstances. But if you run around with a long, sour face, blaming everybody and always sour and nasty with people, a zinger for everybody every time you turn around, there's not much love present. There's not going to be much healing present. But you notice that this situation with this woman with the issue of blood, Yeshua says, he turns to her, he says, no, you know, I don't know how many, as I say, there are in a throng, or there are 2, 10, 100, 1,000, I don't know. In one case, there were 5,000 we're told about, but only one person. I'm sure many of the people in that throng needed healing. Made the difference. He said, your faith, which I would offer is your willingness to believe in a principle and open the deepest hidden parts of your own heart and your own mind to the presence of love. And he put her healing process in her hands, not that he worked a miracle, as many would want you to believe. He worked a miracle in that he taught principles. And when you understand the principles, he says, the things I do, you can do in greater. You get that? In greater. It's not that he becomes the hero of the story because he fixes everybody. He becomes the hero of the story because he understands how to do it, and he shows you. And then, of course, you have to do it. As he said, the things I do, you can do, and greater. But you can't do it by standing around in the old mindset, in the old ways of the world. It takes the awakening process of moving into that space of love. So again, the best way I know to accelerate healing is to apply what I like to call cosmic grease. It is the willingness to embrace with love whatever you find inside yourself. It speeds up the process immeasurably. So it's that willingness, that openness to allow that information to be accessed and flow. And that's exactly what we're working to have people understand and apply in their lives, to enter into that practice of functioning as conscious, active, present love, and to continuously move through anything that is less than that love, to free oneself of all hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, all dis-ease conditions. Relative to this human energy system, there are basically two qualities of energy. There's that which builds the system up and that which tears the system down. There's integrative and disintegrative energy. Disintegrative energy is that which kills. It is hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, and trauma. Bring it forward in the presence of love, and you get dissolution. Breathe and bring it forward in the presence of love. You get fast action. Things start to move in the most incredible and amazing ways. And so that's the next piece from Why Is This Happening to Me Again? I like this book. I think it's fun. I hope you do too. And by the way, if you don't have a copy, it's out of print, so we can't sell you one. But if you go to Amazon or eBay, you can usually find a copy or 2 or 3 or 10 there. So pick yourself up a copy. And or you can go to our website and you can download it free in any one of, I'm not even sure how many now, 7 or 8 or 9 different languages. So just go to the website, just picture the book, click on the book, and you find a list of the different languages available. And so delighted that you're here with us to have this conversation. And we're at about the quarter-way mark through this show. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
Well, there are 3 hands that have been up since Dr. Tim, but I looked away for a half a second and I thought I saw it flash. So I'm not sure that one of them may have pressed 1 again. So I'm going to start with Magda, and we'll see. Did you press 1 again?
Who you
talking about, Magdalena?
Oh, no, I'm complete. I'm just listening.
Okay. Oh. All right.
Awesome.
I'll check the others.
All
right. Blessings.
Okay. Anything to share from your breathing last night?
Well, I actually did share something with Susan and Dr. Tim. I'm a little embarrassed about this, which is my work to do. You know how you were. I had a good time all in all, especially with having that vision of myself as a 4-year-old walking into the thick woods with this great big protective wolf next to me. That was fabulous. Right. But here's my embarrassment. I heard you calling people different names and making comments on how well they were doing with their breathing or their still points or whatever. And I wanted some of that. And I thought, my ego was just rampant. Why is he not noticing me? Am I not doing well? It was really pretty amazing how that rose to the surface. And I noticed what it was. I realized what it was, and I just kind of laughed and chided myself about, oh, come on, ego, lay down, So that was
that's funny.
Interesting. Yeah, very much.
Well, maybe you need to go back and listen again because I did speak to you a couple of times through the process.
Did you?
Can't recall that? Yeah, I did.
I will need to listen. So
yeah, you'll have to give it a listen.
Yeah, that might say something about deflection and denial and all of that.
Selective hearing,
okay, yeah.
Perhaps. I don't know. We'll see. Give it a listen. So let me know what you think.
I will. Is it online? Is it online now, Jeannie? Oh.
Yeah, I think she sent out the links to it.
Okay.
So the video's there.
Yeah, it's already out in the Facebook group. I put it out last night.
Facebook.
There's been
Thank
quite a
so
few
much.
comments. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was sweet energy from the whole group.
Oh, very much so. Yes. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm looking forward to whoever.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Blessings. Bye-bye.
All right. I'm going to check and see then. Miss Susan, did you press 1 again?
I did not. I'm always happy to talk, but why don't you check with the other people? Because this is no fair. I already got a lot of airtime with Dr. Tim.
That old fairness issue of I don't deserve the attention. That sounds like a good worksheet topic for me.
Truly, though, some people have had their hands up for a long time. I'm not being, I think that's fair. I'll hang out.
Okay. Well, we'll go check with that other hand that's up.
All right. And we did have a new hand come up too, but let me check the third one. Anne, did you press 1 again?
No. However, I was going to call in, but I just happened to already be on with Dr. Tim because I chimed in with
go for it.
Mary and Ellen, and we were talking with Susan. So, but I had texted I would come on this afternoon because the details of my sleep issue is the fact of I need to eat earlier so that I can get to bed earlier. So somehow I have fallen back into the habit, and also I broke my abstinence from television. So last night was night 4 of 0 TV. I thought that I could handle doing DVDs and do the Prime and everything, but then I would still wind up eating late. Oh, well, because I'm eating, I can watch it. Well, then I would stay and I have to finish it. I couldn't, stop the story. I had to. So I just, without effort this time, I just stopped doing it because I had arranged some furniture different too, hoping that would help me. And I also looked at my question that's on the television, which is, what is my relationship with you, that I'd done a while back. I changed that. I was answering it wrong. I was answering it like, oh, it's okay, I can do a few. But no, I can't because I was still using the television to numb the pain of whatever I was going through. So it qualified as an addiction, and I need to stop it. And you told me that before, a long time ago, just really quickly. Stop it. Well, yeah. But for some of us, it's a little more difficult to do. So I don't know, the wake-up sheets I need to do, is it because I want to stop? I mean, do I need to cancel the goal that I want to eat earlier? I want to go to bed earlier? Those would be 2 separate ones.
Yeah, I would suggest that you dig out the mind goal management sheet. And if you're not using that currently on a consistent basis, then start using the mind goal management sheet so that you're, what you're really talking about here is using or strengthening your faculty of will. And I don't remember from your personal code evaluation exactly where your will score was, but you're talking about strengthening that faculty. And so, say it again.
It's up there. The use of will, it just switched places without, and I am getting better with that. However, but it's...
Well, then you've done laws of living, so you've got the mind goal management sheet.
Right.
I'd start digging that out, and it's what you're being called to do is to strengthen that faculty of will, spiritual faculty. And, of course, you go back to the video on the personal code evaluation and watch that particular section on what are the assignments for strengthening will, and I'd go to it along with the forgiveness process.
And actually, I did that earlier, but then I let it go. So I have a mind goal management sheet out here, and it's like, okay, I got better at least writing them down. Like for today, I made a list on my planner, and I used that instead, but I was, again, sporadic. It was not consistent. So it goes back to, and I think there's a mind shift, I think, on one of those the personal code evaluation that talks about mind management, consistency, something about consistency and managing.
Right. And remember that of the 5 things that will can do, one of them is it can maintain a goal. And it sounds like that's the one that you want to really strengthen, is your ability. You can pull it up, you've got the goal, and you do it, it sounds like, for a day or 2 or 3, and then you let it go. You're not maintaining it. So, paying attention to that particular arena and strengthening it would be what you want to do.
And I think that came up last night with my stuff. It's about me, and what I do is I allow others to frame my goals, and so, okay, I should go do that instead of writing it down. And if I write it down and I stick with it, it works. I know that it works because it's worked before. So staying out of letting others run my schedule.
So then the other thing that you might want to do is look at number 10 on the personal code evaluation. Again, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know what your scores were like there, but that sounds like it's also that consistency or validity score. And so you might want to look at the assignments there, watch those DVDs, do that mind shift, or do that word link, and tie all of that together to strengthen that consistency or validity score as well, because it's when score is weak that we can be drawn off in other directions.
Mm-hmm.
So even if that was not showing up as one of your higher score or your lower scores, I do that one in conjunction with the will.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. The other thing I wanted to ask about is my bone density scores went up still more. I've only been taking supplements for this last year, and then but they not up, and then they got worse, whichever, up or down. I don't know. It's still confusing, the minus this and the minus that. But I went and got the real report, so the one that my doctor printed out, which was just, the figures, and where it had the pictures and it had the comparisons over the last years they've done it. Well, there was a period of 9 years where I didn't get a bone density. And I started looking at the comparisons. So why between 2010 and 2009 and 2011, it's gotten worse. So rather than just do supplements, isn't there research behind the weight-bearing exercises? And I started that, and I fell off the wagon with that last week, but I'm starting back on today. I have the equipment here in the house now, the proper stuff, and that goes back to the will, doesn't it?
Following through, yes. Being able to maintain a goal. Once you frame it, once you set it, being able to maintain it so that you carry through with it. And so I would, again, use the mind goal management sheet there. And, one of the other things that I would, and if you'd like, we can have a conversation off air if you'd like to check it out. But the Avicen that we've talked about, at least 3 people that I know of, their hair is getting darker. Magda was the first one that shared that with me. She's been on the machine for about, I'm not sure now, maybe 5 or 6 months, and she was noting that her hair was getting darker. And then back a couple of months ago, after I'd been on it for probably 8 months, I went down to breakfast one morning, and Jean said, "Your hair's getting darker. What's going on here?" And then she started to notice with COVID, normally she would get hers dyed on a fairly regular basis, and with COVID happening, stopped, and now instead of coming in as a gray, it's darkening. So one of the things that the Avicen does is it opens microcirculation and tends to drive nutrition deeper into the cell. And so that might be something you might want to look at as a support system for getting that nutrition in deeper into the tissue structure.
Okay, right. And I know that Julie has purchased that as well, and I can talk with her. But so what is the research, or what has been your experience with the weight-bearing exercises that, help to build the bone density as well?
Well, basically, it's the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it. And, if somebody, cancel the thought, breaks a leg and they're laid up for 3 months, they're going to have to do something to get the muscle tone back. They're going to have to use it and work it. Well, the bone is no different. The thing that causes a bone to be strong is that it gets to be used, and it calls for building strength. And if you don't do that, then there's no reason for it to maintain the density that it's designed for the load-bearing process that it does, and especially if you're eating acidic foods. And I don't know where you're at in that regard, but if you take, the blood has to be a certain pH. I'm not remembering offhand what it is, 5.3, whatever it is, like within a point or two, and if you eat a lot of acidic acid-based foods, drink acid-based fluids, and that would be things like coffee, sodas, those sorts of things. Phosphoric acid is in just about every soda. If you take in a lot of acid foods, it goes into the body, and the body says, oh, my God, we've got acid here. We can't let this get into the blood, because if the acid-alkaline balance of the blood goes off just by a point or so, there are only hours of life left for that body. It's going to die. And so when we do a lot of acidic thinking or foods or fluids, then what happens is the body says, I have to buffer this acid. Well, there's one mineral that's abundant in the human body, the most abundant mineral in the human form, and that's calcium. And most of it is in the bones, although there's a certain level of it in the blood as well. But if you do a lot of acid-forming foods and drinks, then the body pulls calcium out of the bone to buffer the acid so that it can dump the nutrition into the bloodstream without doing damage. So it kind of, it prioritizes things. Yeah, we need that calcium in the bone, but we don't need it nearly as much as if this blood calcium or this acid-alkaline balance goes off in the blood, we're dead. So it tends to suck that out of the bones. And so when you get rid of those acid-forming foods, acid-forming thoughts, and acid-forming fluids, then the body has a better possibility of balancing itself. And instead of pulling calcium out of the bone to balance the blood pH, the calcium can stay in the bone. If people eat a lot of meat, a lot of protein, the protein is acid, amino acids. If people do a lot of dairy, the countries in the world that have the highest levels of dairy use and meat use are the ones with the highest levels of osteoporosis. Because when you take something that's that concentrated, let's say a piece of cheese, in order to create a pound of cheese takes about 5 pounds of milk. That's pretty concentrated protein. And with that level of protein, the body, they promote it as, build bodies with calcium from cow's milk, but the truth is the protein overrides the calcium, and the calcium isn't the right kind of calcium to go into the bone. So that's another thing to understand and get the right kinds of calcium. It's kind of like if an example I use is I'm building and building, and I'm getting ready to go away for a couple of months, and I'm using 6-inch blocks to build my building. And I'm about a third of the way there, and you contact me and say, Michael, I just got a really good deal. I know somebody that wants to get rid of a bunch of blocks, and I know you haven't got all the blocks you need for your house yet. Do you want them? And I say, oh, yeah, sure, that'd be great. If you go ahead and buy them for me, I'll refund the money to you when I get back and just have them deliver them to the house. And you say, okay, great. And I get back home, and you deliver 12-inch blocks to my house. Well, I'm building my house out of 6-inch blocks. You can't use 12-inch blocks when you're building a 6-inch, using 6-inch blocks to build the house. So now what do I have? I have this waste product, all of these blocks in my house, and I got to get rid of them. And the body's trying to throw off excess calcium if it's not the right kind of calcium that gets into the bone. And there are only a couple different, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but there's something like, if I remember correctly, 32 different isotopes of calcium, and there are only 2 or 3 of them that can go into human bone. Cow's milk isn't one of them. So, there are a lot of factors that come into what goes on with calcium absorption and bone density. And certainly exercise is one of them.
Yeah, I can see, though, that I have not been in a gym. I have not done weight-bearing exercises except for walking with my backpack on, which is not enough, that over the last 2 years. So even, because I had one a year, when you have higher numbers or like that are moving towards Medicare will pay for another one, once a year. And so I was able to get it like in a year. But the one before that, so I was not moving enough. So that's part of it. And then what about the goat cheese? Would it still be the same? Goat cheese?
No, goat cheese, goat milk is a whole different product. It's totally different from the structure of cow's milk. You think about a cow, you've got a 50-pound body that is born, and within a year it's up over 1,000 pounds. If you want to build one of those bodies, man, that cow's milk is awesome. But goats aren't quite like that, and actually goat's milk is much closer to mother's milk. So if you're going to use a cheese, I think goat cheese and goat milk is much healthier than.
Right. I have been watching. What I've been eating is just not enough. Okay. All right. I have a plan. I mean, I had a plan before, but now I need to do the work to be consistent with it and keep it on myself, which is what I got from Still Point, and that's what was hard to take. I've known it, but I need to take action on it to keep it on myself and not others. Okay. Okay, I'm breathing. Thank you.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Blessings. Thanks.
Hey, lots of love and blessings. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay. And we have another caller, area code 314. I believe this is Mr. Doug.
Hello there, Michael. Yes, it is.
Hey, sir. Welcome.
I just really
What's on your mind today?
I really enjoyed your introduction today and kind of wanted to comment on that and maybe take it a little further. When you were talking about about Christ and miracles and and so on, I've had this question on my mind trying to sort out the whole Christ died for my sins thing, and also how it feels like sometimes that because of their misunderstanding of forgiveness, you're a little hard on the traditional Christians, and yet I see that they get benefit. And it sort of opened the gate for me. It's like, okay, so what happened in that community, at least I see the distortions, but Christ, and I just wanted to get your, feedback on this too, is that Christ somehow, the whole idea that he sacrificed opens the door to love for a lot of Christians. It just opens the door to they think, oh my goodness, he sacrificed for me, so so then they feel like I can let that love in, and that starts their healing. Even if they don't understand and they have this church-driven misunderstanding that God hates them, or, that somehow they have to be redeemed from their evil ways through this sacrifice of this innocent being, it still opens the door. So for me, that sort of helps bridge. And I just, when you were saying how he, again, I just keep going here. I can stop at any time. But the way I was brought up, the whole Garden of Gethsemane thing Christ did was his suffering taking on our sins. And as you've reframed it, it's like he was purging out of himself his own unhealed yet content so that he was willing and ready as a clear and open being to go to the cross. That's my understanding. And to do whatever the Father wanted. And so I'm just, having a discussion about saying that the opening of the love was the most powerful part, that he's saying to that woman, your faith healed you. And what opened that gate was him, his presence just opened the gate for her to let that love in to be healed. Am I understanding that more or less as you're sharing it today?
Well, my take would be that, it doesn't really explain to us what preparatory work she had done. She comes into the space ready for something, and he is the space and supports her. So he doesn't take credit for it or even initiate, although maybe it was contact with him that initiated for her. I don't know. It doesn't give us any explanation in that regard. Just that she was prepared and ready for that kind of support, for that level of support. And I would tie that to, being in the uptight, lockdown, physiological, sympathetic nervous state, where the unwillingness is, where the resistance is, where the holding on is, and moving into the parasympathetic state where the body starts to open, capillaries start to open, blood flow happens, nutrition and oxygen are delivered to the cell in abundance, and all of that is going to open the healing process, and then add that key ingredient of conscious, active, present love, which I would interpret that as what she gained from touching the hem of his garment. She touched into a level of support that she couldn't achieve on her own. And so, as far as the suffering being a gateway, that's certainly one way to look at it. That would be, to me, that just thinking about the best way to express it, I would see it as much more profound, and if it's not available, then let's take the lesser route, but I would see it as much more profound for somebody to recognize that the same basic nature that was in Christ is in them, and that mind, Paul talks about, it's the mind of Christ in me, that we each have that mind, and that is the mind of love, which I would interpret quite literally as created out of the mind of and the actual presence of the love of God. And so, to me, taking someone directly to that knowledge and opening, and you've heard me do it hundreds of times probably, where I ask people to tap into the essence of the newborn, and that newborn energy is purely the presence of love, and that is where the ultimate healing is going to occur. Can I vicariously connect to someone else's love and move into it? Yes. But my take would be to put somebody through a whole course on suffering to get to that is a tough way to get there. And I don't think that the Gethsemane experience was necessarily preparation for the cross. I think the Gethsemane experience was the preparation for demonstrating what love does when under stress. He walks out of the garden, he had asked disciples to be there as support. He was looking for their active presence of love to support him in his process in Gethsemane. And at one point he says, can't you guys stay awake for an hour? Can't you stay in the presence, holding the space for me for even an hour? And I also take that. This was an instruction I got a couple of weeks ago in a Still Point session that I was doing, was that's also his invitation to you and I today to stand at the garden, at the gate, and be that presence of love to support opening the processing of this enormous quantity of pain that exists on the planet, this enormous quantity of trauma. But to me, the most important part of that whole process, once he stepped out of the garden, was when he confronts the enemy. And this is in terms of a very practical and real lesson for us. He steps out of the garden. His henchman is there, the guy who's, asked about a sword and, ready to kill anybody that gets in his way. And it's interesting, the guy who's got the sword and is going to kill, who's going to, save him, he refers to that man directly as Satan. And he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And then he describes what he means by that. He says, "For you think in the mind of man rather than the plan of God." And then he turns to the man who he knows is going to have him mercilessly slaughtered, and he does the human thing, like an actual human being, love. He reaches forward, instead of dressing the man down and making sure his wounds are, pointed out and made more terrible, as the non-being mind would do. He turns to this one who's going to wound him tremendously, and he offers him healing. He offers him support. He demonstrates what it is to function as a human being. And to me, that's one of the most important lessons when we've got the brain cells for it to get from that whole experience. And then, and you've also heard me say it kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way of, so people watch him functioning as a human being with a high priest servant, and they say, yeah, and did you notice that doing that got him dead? And here's what he was really being prepared for, and that is, yes, I noticed they got him dead, but did you notice they couldn't keep him that way? That
right, because
he was not locked into the traumas in his body because he had worked through them. Therefore, he could not be drawn into death by that torture and the actual murder of his body. And, took him 3 days to rebuild it, and, hey, I'm back. So I see it as the real savior part of that is when we can see it as a demonstration for ourselves rather than, well, it happened 2,000 years ago and it's going to take care of us today. I watch a lot of people who hold that belief system, and I see them in jails, and I see their children committing suicides, and I see their failures and their spousal abuses and the trauma that they're going through, and I say, you need something else. You need some very real tools that will work in your life today for freeing yourself of those things that inhibit you from following the example of, if the enemy shows up, I reach out in love and offer healing rather than more of the abuse that I've had inflicted on me. Is that fitting with your search?
Yes, it's helping, and it's the goal being to be operating as the presence of love at that level that he was demonstrating, and that he's demonstrating this example of what's possible for us. And then I also feel that for some people, as I think I heard you more or less acknowledge, that perhaps a beginning stage for some people, and that's how I'm seeing it, is that perhaps for some people who are so steeped in all of these false beliefs about how they're no good and they're worse than the dirt of the earth, it's like, okay, well, somebody sacrificed for me, so at least I can open the gate to the possibility that somebody could love me, or that I could be worthy of love in some way, which is like just opening the crack, to let love in and start the healing. And then the other idea I got out of all that was that perhaps not so much in preparation for the cross, but in preparation to remove everything less than love that needed to be removed in the Garden of Gethsemane to be completely ready to demonstrate the resurrection, perhaps. But I also heard you saying that he was inviting us all there to hold love for all the challenges of the earth, for all of the sin and difficulties and off-the-markedness and pain that's in the earth, that he was holding presence for that to help redeem or open the space for that to be healed, and inviting us to do the same. Is that what I've heard you say reasonably?
Yeah, that's where I go with it.
Okay, so
and it's the demonstration. The demonstration that when someone comprehends, oh, I'm capable of that, that's when that big shift occurs, rather than I'm disabled and somebody else has to do it for me. Right. That as he was, is who we ought to seek to be, and as he said, do as he did and more. Right. Instead, he saved us all, and we don't need to do anything else, and he's different from us, and that's one of the great distortions that exists, is that he's somehow the only begotten Son of God, and we're inferior forever. Yeah, and in the Aramaic, the words that have been translated as only begotten translate properly as first begotten. That's important. First begotten. That's important. Well, we were invited into the club. And how would you interpret that? As in first brought forward from the heart of God, like an older brother? I think an older brother would be a right way to say it. And, coming up in a world, if you look back 2,000 years ago, the levels of hostility and fear, the rage, the abuse, the disproportionate punishment that existed in the culture was pretty horrendous 2,000 years ago. So he came into that. His genes were of that. And recognizing that that's what needed to be overcome, he went to work. And I would hear that particular phrase as, so here's someone who reached a critical mass of healing his genes, his genetic history, his physiology. You know, I see the time spent in the Garden of Gethsemane. You know, he starts out and he says, you know, if this cross, I don't know if I can do this. I'm really not too interested in this. And he's obviously listening, so he's got direct communication with that mind that is in him that even Albert Einstein, acknowledges exists. If you're a real scientist, you got to know that there is a spirit working throughout and in this world, is what Einstein says. So obviously he's got a clear communication with that power that resides within. And so I would see the first begotten as, in the context of where the average person lived, moved, and had their being, which was in rage and vengeance and, just some horrendous injustice, was the first one to awaken fully to functioning in that context, going back to the space where he functioned out of the original mind that we were each given, and that is the mind of love. And so that's how I would understand the first begotten. And, he says at one point, I've opened the door wide. Nobody can close it. You want to come through? Come on. I'm inviting you. Here's the demonstration. Here's how you do it. And sadly, a lot of that has been misinterpreted. And it's almost like an unconscious effort, or maybe a conscious effort, of those who've not opened the door, who've not done the work, who have not walked through the door, to say, oh, I know what it's all about. Let me tell you what our dogma and our doctrine is, rather than here's how you walk through the door that he opened. We each have to do the work of walking through the door, which means facing that in us which is not founded in love, and the willingness to process through and forgive all of that.
So as in this case, holding it from that space that you're speaking of, it's like he was begotten in his lifetime. It's like he demonstrated the bringing of the ability to bring the genetics, all of the disharmony, everything that was going on, the hatred and so on, that was given through the genetic aspect, into the full transformed action and activity and consciousness of love, so that then he was free from all of that and demonstrated how all of us can do that, right?
Yeah, and that would be it. And in the context of people, there's one story I can remember how shocked I was reading it, and there's a young woman who's the son or the daughter of a tribal leader. And, this is a tribal society, and there's one of the other tribes that the son and the two meet, and they fall in love, and they end up having sex. And, that's like, the penalty is horrendous. And the young man submits to the father of the woman he wants to marry. He says, I really, want to marry your daughter, and yes, we've made a mistake, and I'm willing to do anything that needs to be done. And my father's standing beside me as our tribal leader, our tribal chief, will do whatever you ask. And so the father of the girl says, well, we are Jews, and you're going to have to convert. And so the whole tribe agrees, okay, we'll convert. Well, what's the first thing you do with men when they move into Judaism? You chop off the tip of their sexual organ. And so that's what they did. And, of course, you're not much of a fighter in that condition. And the father of the girl went in and slaughtered everybody in the tribe. Proportionate insanity. but that's the kind of thing that was going on. And so to wake up from that and to find fairness and to find functioning as the presence of love and to develop the tools for doing that and be willing to hand them to the world, that to me would be the first begotten, the first one who woke up and said, oh my God, what are we doing here? This is crazy. We're designed to function as love. What are we doing? And then standing strong in that and having developed a whole body of work to bring forward to the world and offer it to people and energetically open that door for everyone to move through it if they're willing. Exactly. And then recognizing that there's work to be done, as opposed to, it's some kind of magic formula. You say magic words and then you see it's all done. And I mean, I've heard people in the church today who say, if you make that declaration, then it's all taken care of. And even if you go out and you become a killer or a thief or whatever, you're still, quote unquote, saved. It's like, talk about misunderstanding how an energy system works. That's about the epitome of it. But it does, give room for a dogma that if people buy it, they're like, well, this is pretty easy. Those disciples that left when they said to Yeshua, how do we please God? And Yeshua told them, and they said, too hard a saying, and they left and never came back. It's like, well, they made an easy path. All you have to do is declare these beliefs and say these magic words, and you see, then it's all done. And that's not anything like what Yeshua said. Yeshua said there's work to be done. You've got to clean up your act and not just declare a belief in me, but, you never find him saying that. In fact, the place where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, in Aramaic, that's an idiom. And what he's saying is, here, I've shown you the path. Man and his work were one, similar to, I and the Father are one. If I were using an Aramaic idiom, and let's say you were supposed to meet with me tomorrow, and I couldn't make it, and I sent my son, Michael J., you would turn to somebody and say, you met with Michael yesterday because I and my son are one. Well, a man and his teaching were one. So he's not in an ego sense saying, I am the way, it's me, I'm the hero here. He's saying, I've got a body of work I've given you, I've offered you, and here's how you do it. Now go and do it. Eat my body and drink my blood is an Aramaic idiom that says you've got to incorporate, understand, and integrate everything that I know if you want to actually follow me. And so he gives the pathway. And in that sense, I don't know. I haven't seen anywhere else on the planet that pathway exists. So is he Savior? Absolutely, 2,000%. And to me, in a whole lot more realistic way than a magic incantation, which is what the pagans were about doing, repeating magic words and thinking they'll get a result from it. And we're down to the last minute. So, Doug, we could pick this conversation up tomorrow if there's more to be done. Otherwise, I'm going to just invite everybody to have the best year yet of your eternal life. Thank you for the thoughts, Doug. Good discussion. Opens some good spaces. And blessings. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.